You don't need all that. You're not passing legislation. We traded a lot to pair Paul and Kawhi in exchange. We had 5 seasons of contention.
Did you?
Gee whiz. Even though we fell short of our ultimate objective, we appreciate the chances we had with Paul. They also went on to say they were excited about the opportunities they were afforded, including greater flexibility under the new CBA, which fans lost their minds about. They loved it. Brew, how will you remember your Clippers?
First of all, I'm doing this segment under protest.
Okay.
Why?
Because I picked them like 1 year.
No, you picked
and they're
them
my Clippers.
You picked them literally this year to make the conference finals.
I think
you
did.
Literally picked them.
Is that the championship?
Well, it's a lot
the
further than they got.
It's the championship.
Just every year you picked
They've
them
been
more
to the conference finals. Here's the deal. I will remember Brews Clippers like I'll remember Brews Nets.
Don't you?
Failure. No, I really believe that. Failure.
I have the graphic for
But failure because of, and I'm not guaranteeing they would have won a championship, but failure because of injuries.
How'd
With the
they
Nets,
look when they were fully healthy?
they only had 1 year
How'd
of
it
that.
go? What
and
happened?
they failed. But that's 1 year. If I were to take essentially every player in the history of the game and say, how'd he look that 1 year? A lot of guys, Luka failed this year. Doesn't mean they're going to keep failing.
Luka's failure this year would have been the apex of the Clippers franchise history.
It's still a failure.
It's not, okay.
All right, in general, he didn't get it done in the championship series. I can point to a lot of guys that didn't do that. LeBron after Dallas, how'd he look? Well,
Yeah, but
we
if
saw
that-
after that.
Okay,
So
go
I'm just saying, you can't say they failed 2020 in the bubble.
Yes.
That was the one chance they had. They're up 3-1 over Denver, and they choke. And not only did Paul George, who I talked about last segment, 4 points, 4 for 16. Kawhi, 6 for 22. I think he had 14 points.
And every game they blew
7.
a huge lead. And
They choked.
Yeah.
But Kawhi is a championship guy, has championship medal.
Yeah.
So he had a bad game.
Yeah.
But my point is, after that, Kawhi, the year they went to the conference finals, he missed the last 8 playoff games. All right? This past 2 years, he's played 4 out of 11 playoff games. And so I'm saying, you're going to sit here and act like injuries were not a huge,
I'm not gonna
the defining factor of their run.
I'm just going
just like with Brooklyn.
I'm going to go, I'm a facts guy, Brew. You know that.
Yeah.
I just gave
And
a
the
litany
facts
of
are, it will go down as one of the single worst trades in the history of the league. Now, we can say for that injuries ruined it, we can give whatever qualifiers, but we can show you what the trade was. For 5 years of Paul George, what you gave up was Shea, Jalen Williams, couple rotation guys, 2 more first-round picks down the road, and a swap next year as well. So all of that for what? Well, what did you achieve
like the Nets.
in the 5 years? Right, that's on the Nets at least had the excuse of our Russian oligarch owner a year in was like, screw this, I'm out.
But
and
quickly on that, wouldn't you say the Nets was worse? Because you were getting an old team.
That's why I said one of,
I'm
and
not mad
B.
at them for going for
Now,
it.
the Nets didn't have nearly as embarrassing marketing campaign, billboards, and New Balance commercials, but still. Here is what they accomplished, where it stacks up to the rest of the league. Playoff games won 10th. It's a 30-team league. Series won 3. It tied for 9th. So they are like the Andre. They have a success level of like the Andre Kirilenko Jazz.
Oh.
Like, hey, remember them? They had a cool moment.
I'd
They
say
made
it was
one
the-
conference
wasn't that the
finals.
Darren Williams
Yeah,
guys?
AK-47s and more. Okay, so the Al Horford Hawks. Like, they're not quite to the level
why?
of the what.
Why was it?
Brew, I think
I'm
it's
just
more
asking.
than just injury, but that's fine.
Really?
But what I know is that they look up in NBA lore to the DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry Raptors, which for a team with as much hype as they had is
They
a
were
little
better than
embarrassing.
Look,
It's a little embarrassing.
I'm not mad at them for going for it. The guys got hurt.
Yeah.
They're on 6 finals appearances, 4 titles, 720
Six
games
most.
together, and 6 most wins by a trio all time. Gee, 718 winning percentage. Are you viewing this as the official end of the Warriors?
It's certainly the end of an era. Because their championships, even with Kevin Durant there, because he was there obviously for just the 2, it's about Steph, Clay, and Draymond. Steph and Clay, best backcourt ever. Mark Jackson said it, best shooting backcourt ever early in their career, and they became the best backcourt ever. So in that regard, it's the end of an era. Look, I think the Warriors, they still are going to try to make some moves. The Lowry Markkanen is out there from Utah. I love that.
I love that too.
Oh
I would love it. I don't see
it.
how they can get it, but go ahead.
It's going to be different. You're right.
Yeah.
He's a perfect fit if they can get him.
Yes.
And even if they get him, I think, you know, I think I have. I don't know if I have a graphic on tiers later, but not for this one. But I think that they're.
Won't tease the top of the show. There's a graphic coming up.
I think that they're basically where they were last year. They're fighting to just get in the postseason. That includes the play-in, not just the real playoffs, but the play-in. 10th, 11th.
Yeah, there's a lot of. And by the way, I saw the Markkanen thing as well, but I also saw this weekend that they could have gotten Levine. And they said no to it because, to me,
just for Chris Paul or Wiggins.
Or Wiggins, you're right. And then a little salary filler. So that, to me, indicates that Joe Lacob was telling the truth. That their number one goal is to not get under the apron, but to get under the tax. Mm-hmm. And that this is over. Now, I don't view this as I view this as the end of the end. We know what the beginning of the end was. The beginning of the end was this moment right here, before they played a single game in their title defense. This, as history will tell it, was the beginning of the end of the Warriors. We just didn't know it yet, but it was. Mm-hmm. And nothing was right ever since then. That year, they, tried to deal with it, and then they go out kind of quietly in round 2 to LeBron and the Lakers. Mm-hmm. Then next year, we don't have to keep playing this. The next year, they deal with more Draymond-related nonsense, and now they're broken up. One of my biggest takeaways of this deal was, wait, what were the Warriors willing to offer Clay? Like, Josh or Dust, can someone remind me in my ear, what did Malik Monk get?
Well, I thought it was 2 years, $48 million.
But did Malik Monk, I'm off the top of my head, I thought he got 4 for 78, but maybe I'm wrong on, it is 4 for 78. Yeah. Okay. So that is $19.5 million a year. 3 for 50 from Dallas, I understand state taxes, is $16.7 a year. The Warriors weren't willing to give Klay Thompson Malik Monk money? Yeah. Like, I understand, like, not giving him a max. But there was no, like, all right, man, like, you are the second or third most important player in the history of the franchise. Steph is still here. We paid Draymond, who's been out of his mind. And so that, to me, signaled this was not purely we can't afford you. It was we are turning the page. We as a franchise are turning the page, and we can't turn it fully with Steph, Clay, and Draymond all here. So we're not going to match in a world where Hartenstein's worth 87. And listen, I understand younger player, different position. It's not apples to apples, but there seemingly was no loyalty bonus for Clay, which maybe is good business, but it signaled to me the Warriors were done. Like, the Warriors were turning the page.
I'll ask you a question, Brew. So we just spent the last 5 minutes like, all right, Pelinka couldn't land the plane. Mm-hmm. LeBron made the call, couldn't land the plane. Are you surprised? I'll ask you a two-parter, Brew. Pick your question. Are you surprised that Steph didn't throw his body in front of this? And do you think that this will affect, this trio has been together so long, had their highest highs. Do you think removing one part of the trio affects the other two guys negatively?
That's a great question. Questions.
Plural.
I'm not going to blame Steph for not jumping into and saying, hey, you got to keep Clay, because it's not like keeping Clay is going to make them a championship contender. All right? And I'm not saying Steph is fine with him leaving. I'm sure he would want him there. But Steph probably also wants to do whatever we can to get back to a championship level. And I think the best thing for him to do probably is to just stay out in front, stay away from it, because it would just be emotional. It'd just be sentimental. If they re-sign Clay, would we be saying they're any better than they are today? I mean, he's better than nothing, which is what they have now. But I'm just saying. So the second part, Draymond, and I don't know what his relationship with Klay was, but when he kind of laughed it off on the podcast, remember when Klay stopped following him on social media and all that stuff, that shows that I think Draymond seems like he'll be fine moving on. I do think Steph will be bothered.
As long as Draymond's got Jackson for the podcast, he's not. He's got his team in place.
No, look, I think that also Klay may have taken less money elsewhere is a little different than taking less money from where you've been and you won championships.
So that part I totally agree with. That there is. If a place I'll just use Fox as an example, just because there's the only TV job I've ever had. I've worked here my whole career. If all of a sudden I felt like they were, basically trying to move on from me because they offered me, X dollars, a tenth of what I was making before, I might take that exact same deal with someone else that wouldn't feel disrespectful because it's like, no, I have sweat equity and in Klay's case, championship equity built up with you. So I agree with that.
And the role.
Right, in the role.